Welcome everybody to the latest episode of Breaking the Silence of Conversations. Very excited for our guest today, actually. It's been a long time coming. We've planned it. It's kind of not happened until today. So I'm really pleased to introduce My Le. My Le's a doctor over in Australia. I'll let her tell you a little bit about that in a second. But this is a relaxed conversational podcast, really. So we just really want to sort of pick the bones out of what's happened to you. Very rarely am I triggered doing research on a person I'm due to have a conversation with, but this morning is an exception because you've been made an example of, so kind of almost the Australian Dave Cartland. So if you can introduce yourself, My Le, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for your time today.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for having me on your show. So I've known you and follow you for a while, and I'm so so connected with you because we're going through the same thing. So my story is that so going back before I came to Australia, so I was a boat refugee from Vietnam. I came to Australia. Well, I came to a refugee camp in Malaysia in the 1970s, a long time ago, in a fishing boat with my aunt and her family. So I arrived in Australia, arrived in a refugee camp in Malaysia in 1978. And we lived in the camp for about 2 months. And we got sponsored. Well, we applied to come to Australia and we got accepted. So I've been in Australia since the age of 12. And I went to high school, studied and became a doctor. And I was practicing as a GP for about close to 30 years, about 27 years when I got suspended. I previously owned a practice and run a practice, a medium-sized sort of medical centre in the northwest of Sydney for about 10 years. And I sold the business on to a big corporation, and I stayed on to work part-time in the medical centre. So when COVID came along, I was working part-time as a GP. I took a bit of time off because I wasn't sure about the COVID situation. I wanted to know exactly what was happening, so I decided to take time off and do some research. But
can I just ask you why did you choose medicine? Why a doctor, and then why subsequently general practice? What was your motivation? That sounds like a medical interview. Apologies.
It's like I came from how do I say I was an immigrant in this country, and I had to it was difficult, going to school, learning the language, and learning the language, getting used to living in a foreign country. And my mum passed away when my mum was killed by the Khmer Rouge regime when I was 5 years old. And so I've been living with a relative during my childhood age. And so it was just a survival thing for me. I just learned to live and get by every day. And when I came to Australia, I had to help the family because they just establishing themselves in Australia and they didn't have a lot of money. So I had to help them sew, making garments and things like that. So I spent a lot of time doing that. And I had very limited number of hours in a day to study. So I spent a lot of time trying to study and to do well in my schooling in order to get somewhere in life. So I didn't think I'd do very well at all. So I spent every single minute of the day, my day, that I could could get, that I have, save every few minutes to try and study as much as and as hard as I could. And I did well in the high school certificate. So that's a year 12 here in Australia, where your marks important in deciding which course you're going to get in and what university, etc. So I did really, really well, and I got into dentistry. So the logic is that you want to get into the highest, the most difficult course that you could get into with your marks. So there wasn't, it wasn't like I really wanted to do medicine. But when so I did dentistry for about 2 years, and I realized that, I didn't want to do dentistry because I like talking to people. Um, so I did well in dentistry, and I got transferred to medicine. So I became a GP, and I love what what I did. Yeah. And
About GP, it's generalist, isn't it? And it's that communication.
yes,
I think part of the reason I became a GP was that I always remember from my childhood the old school, what I call the old school GP, that was, you knew the family, you knew the social circumstances.
that's it.
And we got that, particularly down here in Cornwall.
Yes,
It ended my practice career, but so general practice is a good kind of all round sort of family.
that's it. Yeah, that's right.
So
And
you
I
said you kind of,
enjoyed that.
yeah.
And I spent about 10 years doing mission work in Cambodia. So I was, during my holidays, instead of going for holidays, I go to Cambodia and do mission work there for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And I did that for about 10 years. And I stopped because of COVID. And I haven't been back because I've been suspended and I have to fight my case. So all
we'll
that
get
had
to
to be
that.
put
So
aside.
COVID started then. So COVID started. Where are you at the time? Are you in general practice? Like you said, you've shared
Yes.
ownership of the practice, and now you just,
Yes.
I say just a GP. You know what I mean? Like a salaried working for someone at the time of the pandemic.
No, so I was on commission. So you work and you get a percentage of that. So there's a contractual agreement with the medical center. So I took time off work, but a few years before COVID started, I was following Donald Trump campaign, the 2019 campaign, and I learned a lot about the politics in America, and and because of that, I was sort of aware of the situation that's happening in the world. What sort of woke me up more so was the financial situation. Believe it or not, I was following the the reckoning of the financial world, and I was quite aware of that happening in 2019. So I was aware that in September of 2019, when the repo market was an issue, I was really, it really hit me hard because I knew that was some significant event was happening. And so towards the end of 2019, I was quite sort of quite concerned about what was happening in the world. And in March of 2020, when they closed down Wuhan, I was like, how do I say? I was so worried because I could tell that something really serious was happening in the world, and it made no sense to me that they were going to close down Wuhan, and for 5 days they allow people to travel wherever they want for 5 days, and these people had COVID and they went everywhere all over the world. And I said to myself, what the hell is going on? So I, following Donald Trump allowed me to be quite cautious about the media. So I wasn't listening to what was on the media. I was following people on YouTube, on Rumble, and things like that. So I was able to, in my own research, pick up a lot of truth about COVID. You know, that it's a bioweb. It was leaked from Wuhan. I was able to listen to Professor Boyle, Francis Boyle, conversation about gain of function research and things like that. So I was very, very. I guess it just one of those things that just continue, like it just keeps happening. Like you sort of get onto this rabbit hole thing, and you just keep digging and digging, and you just keep knowing more, and you get really, really.
I remember back in those days, so because there were streaming images, weren't they, from Wuhan, and it's people
Yes.
collapsing in streets with this alleged respiratory virus just dropping in the streets. It was just happened to be there, and like you say, the lack of lockdown and containment, that didn't make any sense. And then they were blaming the bat market, a wet fish market, and some guy who'd eaten a bat or something. Can you just just up the road is a Wuhan Institute of Virology where there is actually a scientist called the Batwoman, wasn't there? I think who was doing all the gain of function research, funded by
Yes.
Fauci, and
Yes.
I don't want to get myself into trouble by speculating.
No.
You know what I mean? So it's just all never made sense from the very get-go, really. And we were seeing flights in from into Heathrow and people shoulder to shoulder in tube stations, and they're announcing the worldwide zombie virus, aren't they? So what was your experience of people to start with? Were people collapsing outside of your medical centre like in the video footage, or were they coughing and spluttering?
Well, interestingly, Australia was like, because of our strict lockdown, we didn't have, COVID came to us quite late. So I was able to follow what was happening in America, what was happening in Italy and China. So in Australia, we didn't have that many cases, and we were in strict lockdowns weeks after weeks. They let us, they lock us down for, I don't know, months on ends, and then they then lift the lockdown. You can travel 5 kilometers away. You can only be with one other person. If you could go and exercise, you can exercise by yourself or with one other person. And later on, they more relaxed. They let you exercise with 5 people, and it's just stupid things like that. It made no sense whatsoever.
Chasing after runners down Bondi Beach, and they were literally chasing after them because they were either.
Well, they locked down the beach. Yeah, they locked down the beach, and yes, so it's interesting. But when I was going through that, it, like you were triggered. I was very triggered in the sense that it reminded me of what it was like living in communism, under communism, because I was living under communism in Vietnam for about 3 years before I escaped in the boat. So I had a lot of, it just reminded me a lot of time there. And I was scared for my families and friends because they were not awake. And it's very, there's not many people in the medical profession that are awake in Australia. And so it was very difficult for me to try to manage people, my immediate family and friends and relatives and things like that, because no one would believe what I say.
Well, it got very totalitarian very quickly, didn't it? Very restricting rules.
Yeah.
So we were seeing footage in the UK of these kind of encampments that they have for quarantine hotels, and you see the police attacking protesters because people smelled a rat, and they were beaten on the floor, and just because they had a placard, they're saying scam or something. So it was all very totalitarian. I mean, we're taking over now in 2026. The UK is the new totalitarian communist state.
Yes. Well, we're following you just the same. We've got our hate speech law that's just been introduced. So
I've been struck off.
We're not
tweets,
far behind.
Pretty much struck off for social media tweets, which no patient involvement whatsoever. But that's another one for another day. But so the COVID's happening in front of your eyes. Are you kind of, apart from the illogical measures that were being brought in, kind of like Nazi style, really? What were you seeing in the clinic? Were you seeing? I know you said it was the containment measures seemed to work to make sure the cases were low. But
The
what
funny
did
thing
you go
is,
into treating and how to treat these? What were the
the
presentations?
fun, yeah, the funny thing is you're not allowed to see your GP if you're sick. Because during that period, during the lockdown period, if you have COVID, you are to go and go to one of those centers that have the to have the PCR test, and if you're tested positive, you have to be notified, or you need to notify the health department that you're PCR positive, and you have to by law stay in the house until you PCR negative, which usually takes about 2 weeks. So they will have a health practice or a health worker who will contact you every day, and they give you a pulse oximeter, and they call these people every day to say how they're going, and if they get worse, they are to go directly to the hospital or call an ambulance to go to the hospital. They're not supposed to see their GP. They're not allowed to go out and see their GP. And patients were being discouraged to come to medical center. They started telehealth, consult. So it was very quiet. I didn't have very many patients, but I came back to work sort of towards the middle July of 2021 when I found out. When I worked out, I was convinced that ivermectin works, and I said, "Okay, I'm going back to work because there's a solution and there's something that I could do for people."
What led you to ivermectin then? So you've got this scenario where they've announced this worldwide apocalyptic virus. If you're sick, you're not seen, and you sent a little pulse oximeter to essentially go in when you become hypoxic. And was there any advice being given to these patients, or were they just waiting until they became hypoxic? Or
that was the health policy, David.
Yeah.
The health policy in Australia is that you do nothing, that they said that they tell people that there's this novel virus is deadly. We're locked down the country. We're locked down. You can't go to work. But if you do get an infection, you are to stay home. You wait until you get sicker and sicker until you can't breathe anymore, and you call an ambulance and go to the hospital and be intubated.
There was no treatment as part of that. It was literally, you say, there wasn't any talk about vitamins or
no.
So that's where your kind of research came in. How can we help these people then?
That's right.
The deterioration, and that's where acting came in.
The task force specifically tell you not to take this, not to take that, not to take zinc, not to take vitamin C, vitamin D, anything that works. It's
very,
not recommended.
very sinister, isn't it? Even down to vitamins, you're being actively told not to recommend. Quite shocking.
So the only thing they recommended was Panadol.
Sounds like a right killer pandemic on the it's just very bizarre, wasn't it? Like you say, you've got all these totalitarian measures, and then you've got no one's clamoring about, and those that do, as you're going to tell the story, you found a candidate for treating people that were. I mean, what was your experience of the people who did get sick? Do you think the numbers were exaggerated? Did you ever speak to people that were gasping for breath and hypoxic and needing ventilation, or was it more of a kind of self-limiting upper respiratory tract infection?
So like I did a lot of research on the use of ivermectin, and I was aware of various protocols used by various doctors successfully. And before I treated, Uttar Pradesh in India, had used ivermectin successfully, and Indonesia also had used a similar protocol where they use ivermectin, doxycycline, and zinc. So that was the Brody protocol, and I was aware of that. I was aware that American frontline doctors also use a combination. So it to me if you have a deadly disease and you have a treatment that's safe and it's available for patient, why would you use it? I mean, it makes
And this
no
is a cheap
sense.
this is a cheap drug. It's multi-purpose. It's obviously in the UK it was branded as horse dewormer and
Mm-hmm.
derided by the media. But very, very. You only have to go to some of the search engines like PubMed or Google Scholar and type in ivermectin and not only COVID, but ivermectin and cancer, ivermectin and inflammation, and you'll see that there's numerous citations of this drug has got
Yes,
multifaceted mechanisms of benefiting patients, particularly with infective or inflammatory problems. And and there were studies that actually showed specific to COVID. Like,
yes,
I think Principal study off the top of my head was a big one, that showed ivermectin reduced morbidity and mortality very early on.
yes. So ivermectin's been around for multiple decades, and it's one of the safest drugs that we have. So, why wouldn't you use that? Why wouldn't you use a drug that's safe for a deadly condition, and for with evidence that it works, and people who treated with that condition lived. I mean, there's so many stories of so many doctors' testimonies that have used it successfully. So to me, as a GP, um, it makes no sense for me to deny my patient of a treatment, of a cure. I call it a cure that's available for deadly disease, and it makes no sense to treat them late. Early treatment is the key for with hydroxy or with ivermectin. So you initiate them, you give them a prescription before they get sick. Once they get sick, they are to take the medication, they get better. And this is so that they don't get so unwell that they need to be hospitalized.
So at this time in
So
Australia, were you kind of going rogue? And I say rogue in tongue in cheek, actually. You kind of like filling prescriptions for ivermectin, and were you getting funny looks from your colleagues, or What's My Le doing here? She's lost the plot. She's doing this horse dewormer and helping people.
so David, I I don't know what other people do, but I mean, I don't know what other people are doing, but for me, it's like, oh, you got a treatment that works, you got a disease that would cause people to die if you don't treat them. And if you were to come to me and I'm your Dr. David, and you know and you say, is there a treatment that works? I'm going to give it to you. And if prescribing is going to risk me of losing my license, well, which one's more important? And I wasn't doing anything illegal. I was prescribing ivermectin before it was banned. And also my patients had or were consented. They had informed consent that they were taking a medication that was not approved for COVID, but it was off-label use, and they're happy to use that because it's either that or doing nothing. So I didn't do anything wrong. I was doing what a doctor's supposed to do, and I thought that all my colleagues and everything else, everybody else, was doing the same thing. Um, I couldn't understand that people wouldn't do what I was doing. I really couldn't understand it.
So while you were going sort of working, I'm saying working in the shadows, I am saying this sarcastically, but giving these decisions to help your patients successfully,
It
when
wasn't
when
like
did
that.
trouble start coming to your door? When did this all start taking a turn for the worst? Were you reported to the regulator? Were you snitched? What happened there?
So I um I joined a group called COVID Medical Network where doctors were discussing how to treat COVID patients, etc. And one of the doctors from another state happened to know a patient in Sydney who um, had been to the hospital for something else, apparently, but was discovered to have COVID. She then discharged against medical advice, went home, and deteriorated over a number of days. And she then tried to get help. And a friend of hers was aware of a doctor interstate, but because she's interstate, she look around and see who was sort of close to this patient, and so she asked me whether I would help her. But when I was asked to look after this lady, I was told that she's not very sick and that she's only had COVID for 3 days, and do what you can for this patient. So I said, sure, not a problem. So I started treating this patient. And my first assessment of her was she was really, really unwell. She had desaturated and she was having trouble breathing. And you got to know that I have to do this consult not face to face, but over the phone, because COVID patients are not allowed to see a GP. They are locked down in their homes. They can't get help. They're supposed to stay at home until they get worse, and the only solution is to go to the hospital, call an ambulance and go to the hospital. Now, this patient had been she'd been in hospital for a number of days. She discharged against medical advice because she was in an isolated room. She was still forced to wear a mask. They didn't give her any treatment, and none of the families could see her, could visit her. So she said that she's going to die in hospital, so she'd rather come home and die with her children. So when I saw her, she was in day 9 of COVID. She was in a pulmonary phase, and I said to her, look, you're too sick. You need to go back to the hospital. And no matter what I told them, they wouldn't go, because I've been there and done and seen how they treated her, so they didn't want to go back. And so I did everything possible to treat this patient, and that was, combination of treatment, ivermectin, protocol. I gave her everything: high dose vitamin D, vitamin C, fluvoxamine, all sorts of things, and also Pulmicort or steroids inhaler. And she did improve for a day or so, but then she deteriorated, and I made a decision to give her post steroids because I still didn't want to go to hospital. So she had oxygen support and everything else, and her oxygen was always maintained at an optimal level. So I was aware of post-steroid being used for severe pulmonary respiratory distress syndrome. And it's funny enough, but I was aware of SARS-CoV-1 in 2003 and how they use high dosage of steroids for people who are really unwell. And I was a fan of Dr. Pierre Corey. So I was following him and I was listening to all of his teaching on YouTube and everything, and reading articles and all that. And I sort of knew how to treat it. I sort of knew how to do it. So I adapted a similar protocol for this patient, and treated her successfully. And I was really, really happy because I was able to get her through the critical stage of the illness. But then at about 2 weeks after that, she started to develop psychosis as a result of the steroid. But by then she was well enough to be discharged, like to not have to be remained at home. So I said to her to see her local GP. She could be having steroid-induced psychosis, better get it checked out and all that. And I discharged, I discharged her from my care. And I didn't hear anything about it until a few weeks later. Well, I actually didn't hear about it for about a month later, for about maybe 6 weeks later, when I received a complaint from the Healthcare Complaints Commission about that patient. Then I got really worried, and I thought to myself, what happened to my patient? So I contacted the family, and that's when I found out what had happened. Um, um, I'm different from other doctors because normally when you receive a complaint, you don't start calling the doctors who make complaints against you. But I sort of, I'm different. So I called the doctor that made a complaint against me. And I said, because I wanted to know what happened to my patient. So I said to her, well, why did you make a complaint against me? What happened to my patient, etc. So she said to me, well, I don't know why I made a complaint against you. I said, that doesn't make any sense. She said, well, I'm only an intern, and I simply follow the orders of my superior. So I said to her, so who's your superior? And she said to me, is this associate professor, the toxicologist at this at this teaching hospital? So I said to her, I like to talk to this professor. His name is Professor Narangunja. I said I like to talk to him because I like to I like to know the reason why a complaint was made against me. Because in because to me, if you were to make a complaint against me, there's got to be good reason why you're doing that, and I like to know why. And first, you should call me and talk to me first before you make a complaint against me, because it's common courtesy. And and I have, to me, I haven't done anything wrong. I couldn't understand why anyone would make a complaint against me when I saved the person's life. So I couldn't understand it. So I left many messages for him to call me back, and he wouldn't call me back. So I realized that he wasn't going to call me back. So I did some research on him. I just put his name down on the internet, and I found out that he was a doctor who went to the media to talk about a case of an ivermectin overdose. And I don't know whether it's a true overdose, but apparently this single patient in the western part of Sydney suffered an overdose of ivermectin, resulted in vomiting and diarrhea, and it was lucky that he survived. And it was a single case, but the media had twisted this case and made it look like the casualty in many parts of Australia was inundated with ivermectin overdose patients, which was not the case at all. But this case, this story of this single patient was had, like media all over Australia for 3 days intensely just uh, uh, broadcast this story over and over for 3 days. And I said to myself, well, why is he making a complaint against me other than the fact that I prescribed ivermectin for these patients? And what was really disturbing at the time was that I received two complaints on the same day, just hours apart, through the same portal system. There's a three mechanism that you can report a doctor, but both of my complaints were made through the same channel. And the second complaint was made by a person by the name of John Smith. So John Smith was not a patient of mine. I have not treated a John Smith. John Smith alleges that I'm an anti-vaxxer. That's the first time I heard of the word anti-vaxxer. And I was not an anti-vaxxer at the time. Maybe I am now, but I wasn't before. So John Smith alleges that I prescribe ivermectin for a friend of his, and this friend doesn't have worms, but he's been given an ivermectin prescription, and apparently he alleges that I conduct, an internet forum, and I conduct an online forum, and I promote an alternative treatment for COVID-19, which I didn't do any of that at all. But John Smith alleged that he's got a prescription of his friend, and that prescription was given by me. I was the prescriber, and so that was a proof of me prescribing ivermectin to this person. The thing is, John Smith, when he committed this crime, he forgot to redact the Medicare number of the alleged friends of the ivermectin script. So what happened is that I was able to identify who that ivermectin script belonged to, and that ivermectin script belonged to my brother. And that prescription was taken by me to the chemist. I dropped the prescription at the chemist. I got the chemist stamp the date on the prescription, and I left the prescription at the chemist because they had run out of ivermectin supplies. So they told me to leave the prescription behind, and they would call me when there's supplies available. And just about 2 weeks later, ivermectin was banned, and I forgot all about it. And I didn't think anything of it. But when I got the complaint from John Smith, and I knew that was my ivermectin script that was at the chemist, I went to the chemist and said, "Where's my ivermectin script?" So the chemist assistant told me that they had handed that over to an APRA agent. That's a health regulator. Apparently, he was there. He happened to be there because they had another doctor who was prescribing a drug of addiction, and he was being kept an eye on by the regulator. And so from time to time, he would drop in and pick up prescription that's written by him. And my ivermectin scripts unfortunately got picked up by an APRA agent. And so my question is, so who's John Smith? And how did he get hold of an ivermectin script that was in the hands of an APRA agent?
So at the moment, we'll just summarise the story. You've saved a patient's life with ivermectin, right? Then you've received by proxy a professor of toxicology through his junior a complaint about saving someone's life. And then your own brother's prescription's been picked up by a guy who happened to just be in the pharmacy at the time and makes a complaint under John Smith, who I presume we still don't know who that is now to this day. Just cowardice. And at the moment, you've saved lives.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no malicious intent with any of these prescriptions at all. So when did this start to escalate? So you've had these two complaints.
So I received the complaint on the 6th of October 2021, and then within 3 weeks I was called in to this emergency suspension hearing, and I was suspended on the day because I was so dangerous. I was deemed such a danger to the public health that they had to ban me immediately.
What's their logic there? As we just said, no harm's been caused. It's a very safe drug. It's got, you personally used it in the past for other reasons. What's the crime here? Is it literally they're saying that ivermectin shouldn't be COVID and you are using it for COVID?
Well, the thing is that when the health regulator was supposed to investigate you, they're only allowed to investigate what's pertaining to the complaints. And over the period that they're concerned about the way you practice, the way you were practicing. So it's like over a period of a couple of months. But with these people, ignore what I just said. Basically, I went into the hearing being accused of prescribing to families, which is a no-no, and treating family members. And but they didn't know that, by the way. That wasn't the complaint to start off with. But my lawyer, my insurance lawyer, just self-admit that I was treating families, and that was my crime. And so all of a sudden, John Smith, who made a complaint about whatever, it became a complaint about my brother. And it was the insurance lawyer who facilitated that and made it that I am now, the issue is now, is about me treating the patient or treating a family member. So that became my crime. Not only was I prescribing ivermectin, I was treating family members. I was treating a patient who was supposed to go to the hospital. She wasn't supposed to be treated at home. So, but I didn't want to treat her at home. This is like an exceptional situation. It's during the pandemic, during the lockdown, when they told people to stay at home, to do nothing, wait till you turn blue until you almost die, then you go to the hospital. And these people were desperate to get help. And I was just doing my best to trying to save her life. So that was my crime. And the other thing they did was I was really, how do I say, I wasn't properly represented, and I felt that the lawyer that was representing me were very friendly with the medical council members, and they were all talking to each other and very nice to each other and addressing each other in their first names. And I go, well, who's on my side? Oh my God, like, who's representing me? And I felt that, I felt I was set up. I really did. And I was so shocked. And I admitted to have written ivermectin to 20 to 30 other patients. And so they wanted the files of those 20 and 30 patients. The thing is that none of these patients made complaint against me. None of them wanted their files to be confiscated by health regulators, because they were so fearful for their lives, because they were mostly from an area of Sydney where they were in lockdown for prolonged periods. And these were people that came from war-torn countries, and they came from countries where they didn't trust their government, and they come to Australia, and this pandemic happened, and they want their medical files. Well, none of them want their files to be handed over, and so
they're making complainants out of non-complainants. Was there any harm in that group, that 30
no,
people?
none of these people want to have anything to do with the healthcare complaints. None of them made complaints against me, and they want their medical files. So I was given advice by 2 lawyers not to hand over, because they had no basis to request for those medical files. And so those are my crimes. And that was the reason why I was suspended.
So take me through that. You've been called into a building at that point and just told you're suspended for now. Did they give you any time limit on that? Did they say this is going to be
no.
There'll be a proper hearing? Because as I understand it, you are still on a rolling suspension.
Yeah. A rolling suspension.
Like several of our other colleagues, it's the never-ending suspension. So
yeah. Do you know what it's called in Australia? It's called indefinite suspension. It's an oxymoron. How can a suspension be indefinite?
Yeah, exactly. It's an oxymoron indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Given out by morons.
The thing is, the biggest crime that the health regulators has committed against me and other suspended doctors is that when they made a decision, at the moment they made a decision to want to suspend any of us, they're supposed to refer us to the tribunal for an independent hearing of the actual complaints. They're not supposed to suspend us for years on end and not having any avenue to have our matter, the legal matter resolved. And that is in the legislation. That was the intention of Parliament when they drafted this thing called the health practitioner regulation national law. That was how the law supposed to play out. Like if you were to suspend a doctor because of a serious complaint, you need to, at the same time, refer that doctor or that health practitioner to the tribunal, so that substantive matter could be addressed and be heard. But instead, what did they do? They suspend us for years on end. They wanted us to just, how do I say, automatically on your own accord leave the profession. So if you don't leave the profession, they then initiate a proceeding against you, called the Section 149C, which is to seek to cancel your license for years on end. So they wanted to cancel my license for 3 to 5 years. So, but the thing is that the injustice is that I haven't had my hearing, the substantive matter of my case has not been heard. But then they go and prosecute me to cancel my license. This is
you've committed no crime here. You've not had a hearing, and yet here you
well,
are.
I haven't had a hearing.
How many years has this been now from the day that you walked out that room? I'll presume they kind of like give you're going to be suspended for 6 months, and then do you get a sort of mini hearing where they just extend it again and extend it again? So all the time you kind of get your hopes up that sanity will get back into the building. And get your hearing, your day in the tribunal. By the way, the tribunals are just as crooked. I can promise you that.
Well,
it's nice to have it heard anyway.
I'm not allowed to say that because I'm at the tribunal, but to me, the tribunal is technically the executive arm of the government. Tribunal is not a court, so it's really doing what the government wants them to do. Really, so that's my logic, and that's what I see when I go to the tribunal. Is that
you say you're in the tribunal now, or there's one just about to start, or what's the situation?
No, so I've been in the tribunal for a long time. So it started since August of 2023. They initiated this proceeding against me 2.5 years ago, and the reason, this is my understanding, was that because I had initiated a court case against the medical council on judicial review. So I challenged legislation, the one that state that you have to refer me when you suspend me. I need to be heard by an independent body. Please refer me. So they wouldn't refer me. I went to the tribunal, but they wouldn't refer me. So I appealed in the Court of Appeal. So that's the highest court. That's the Supreme Court at the highest court in the state in the state. So when I was about to get to the tribunal, I decided to challenge a second legislation. And the Court of Appeal said to me, go back to the tribunal, get that matter heard. Doesn't matter what the decision is, because it's on jurisdiction. It's the court that's going to decide, make the final decision. So all the tribunal needed to do was, it's a formality thing. We submit this challenging this legislation, and they just need to dismiss the case, and then I would then have the two matter heard in the Court of Appeal. So what happened is that the tribunal wouldn't release the decision on the second matter. They kept dragging it on and on. So I got really concerned. So I made a video outside the tribunal and I released it on X on the Friday, and Monday morning, the tribunal called the lawyer. and said that, hey, we're gonna consider releasing the judgment soon. And they did. So within a week, so exactly a week, they released the judgment, and so I was able to go to the Court of Appeal. But what happened is that during the time when they withheld the judgment, which was 17 weeks, the Healthcare Complaints Commission, which is another regulatory body that investigated me, they decided to put in an application to the tribunal to cancel my license. Now, my understanding of how this lawfare was, being executed at the time, and was that if they delay the release of the judgment, the Healthcare Complaints Commission would have time to take me to the hearing, cancel my license, so that by the time I get to the Court of Appeal, I wouldn't have standing to be at the hearing, because my license would have been cancelled, and the Court of Appeal would say, you have no standing, go away. We're not going to hear your case. So anyway, I was very, very unwell. So I said to them, I can't attend this tribunal hearing. So I put in a medical certificate. So as a result, that got adjourned multiple times. So that's why it got dragged on. But my Court of Appeal hearing did get heard in 2024, but they dismissed my case. And I actually disagree with the decision, because I had a very good case, and I believe that I should have won that case on the fact that it was such a simple. The legislation is so simple that a year 9 student could understand what the law state. It's black and white, so it doesn't need.
Are there any other comparative cases? So are there other people around the world, or even in Australia, that have been hauled in front of I was going to say tribunal, but you haven't got there yet. But has anyone had this treatment, for prescribing for a family member? I know that is a no-no, but is there any? Do they strike people off for that in Australia?
Well, we had. I heard that there were about 100 doctors being struck off or being suspended, but many of these doctors just decided to walk away. And so, if you just deregister yourself, then you don't have to face the tribunal. And only a few of us want to fight on. And, so I wanted to fight, because I just couldn't understand why I should be suspended at all. For saving a life, and the second one from a John Smith who stole the prescription from the chemist. And then all of a sudden, I'm guilty of treating a family member. I mean, this whole thing, the way they dealt with my case is like, you don't have to be a genius to work out that it's not law, it's not justice, it's not about justice, it's about something else. And that something else is that, it's about ivermectin. It's so obvious and it is so obvious that I could never ever get justice unless I keep on fighting, and I may not get justice, David. I may not get justice, but if I don't fight, no one's going to hear about it. No one's going to know that this is happening to doctors all over the world.
I think the biggest problem is, people who are watching this might, agree with both of our position that this is a great big nothing burger, I'm going to call it. This is nothing. You shouldn't be going through this for what you've done or alleged to have done. But I think you've got to remember the whole vaccine was built upon, the vaccine indemnity was built upon, not having any new or repurposed drug that would help. And the only solution would be to vaccinate the entire world with several of these mRNA vaccines. And the indemnity would be gone if the drug was found to work. to treat the disease. So that's why you're there. I think
Yes.
that's the bigger issue, that you've upset somebody in big pharma and their profit margins on mRNA technology, rather than it
Yeah.
just about ivermectin. It's disgusting, and abuse of process on one hand.
Yeah.
You've got cowardly John Smiths and toxicology professors grassing you up. I mean, how are you, Mylene? How are you? Because I know I said to you before we started, it's triggered just hearing about your case in the brief research I did before, but there's so many parallels here, and it's the injustice and the abusive process. Like you say, I found in my hearing that these people all knew each other. They were on first name terms, and it was very peculiar. Like you say, who's on my side here? Completely ignoring context, or context here with your brother's prescription. There's a pandemic going on, and telling everyone that this catastrophic pandemic, and people will panic and want to get better if they get the symptoms of this deadly disease, and you're given some ivermectin. Doctors do it all the time. I know that for a fact.
Oh, that's it.
So it's just utterly bizarre that you're in this situation. But how does 2026 look for you? What's the plan here, to keep fighting and keep going, or
the funny thing is, my hearing has concluded in August of 2025, but something had arisen as a result of that hearing. So I called the Healthcare Complaints Commission and the tribunal. Well, let me rephrase it. What happened is that at the last hearing, which was the closing submission hearing in August of last year, a section of the audio of the hearing was cut, and and you're not meant to cut the audio. You're not allowed to cut the audio. It's illegal. It's unlawful for the tribunal to cut the audio.
They cut all of my witnesses. All my witnesses were cut from the case. My own defence bundle was cut. They lost some of it. They even said Dr. Khan didn't even file a rebuttal for this case. And there's a 25-page document, receipted to the regulators, that they deny they've received. So these people are in a big club, aren't they? And it's international, as we're seeing from this conversation, and it's all interconnected. And here are two doctors here that, I mean, you've been practicing for how long now? Up until
for almost 30 years.
Yeah,
and I've never had a complaint made against me.
Yeah, 16 years, 17 years.
All of a sudden, and all of a sudden I had two on the same day.
So we've got 47 years experience here as general practitioners. We could be serving our nation's ill health here. And here we are, sat having a chat on a Dodgy Doctors podcast. Oh, it's very, very surreal. How are you? Just to sort of close, Miley, how are you?
So,
you can see it on my face.
How
are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I try to be, try to live my life as normal as possible, but nothing is just not normal. I still have to struggle and fight this case in the tribunal. So I'm very broke. I got no more money. I'm, trying my best to, so I'm fighting this on my own now since July of last year. And it's, I spent a lot of hours writing up my case so that, because I want to win.
Fuming on the same, wake up every morning thinking, how am I going to, and I'm trying to, it's like a big 5D game of chess, isn't it? And it's all very, but at the end of the game, you've got the people who make the rules who are completely, I know you can't say, but I can, corrupt, backed by big pharma. We've got the General Medical Council in the UK who invest in pharma. In fact, they invest in AstraZeneca, one of the brands. You've got Freemasons galore through the whole system, from pharma all the way down to they're bought in the big dogs. For me, they're bought in the head of the CPS London. There is no higher barrister, and a homicide terrorist barrister to take me out for some Twitter posts and for giving vaccine exemptions, or alleged vaccine exemptions. There were letters basically saying, I think this person can exercise their bodily autonomy. That ethical principle you taught me about at medical school. I'm having to remind the regulators that I'm actually following their regulations, and then duty of candor being one. It's very, very surreal. But here we are, reprobates of the profession.
Yes.
I don't know. Would you, let's say this all gets resolved and you win your battle, would you go back into practice, or have you changed your view on health?
David, it's going to be a while before I get there. So I have initiated two applications against the Healthcare Complaints Commission. My so basically two more hearings, and that's my own initiation. So it's an interlocutory matter, so matters within the case. So one is to kick the judge out of my case. It's really crazy that I'm doing that, but I am. I'm kicking the judge out of the case. It's a recusal application that's going to be heard on the 6th of February. And then there's another case where I'm challenging the integrity of the transcript. So because that was commissioned by the Healthcare Complaints Commission, and they took control of everything, and my transcript where my expert witness gave evidence was not served, was not on the record at all.
Do you see?
So
Do you see you winning this? Do you see us having a catch up in about 3 or 4 years when eventually this all gets sorted out and you've been heavily compensated for the loss of
I
earnings,
don't know.
stress? I mean, this is the thing that you get entrenched into. It's kind of clearing your name, don't you? It becomes a kind of passion. It's all
Yes,
encompassing, and you've gone from medicine and all you've learned in your life is about medicine and helping patients to suddenly becoming a sort of paralegal
yes.
for your own
I mean,
defence.
you learn on the go, and you don't know what they're up to, and you're trying to figure out what they're doing to you. But I don't have a choice, and I can't afford to pay a lawyer. And I, you know, and in my experience on numerous occasions, that my legal counsel was not acting in my best interest at all. Uh, I can say that almost every time. So I
I can
just do the
definitely,
best that I
I can
can.
definitely empathise with that.
Yes. So, and I might not win at the tribunal, but if I don't, I have to appeal to the Court of Appeal. And I'm hoping that the law is going to be on well, I'm on the right side of the law. And I'm hoping that the law, the court will judge it correctly. Because there's many jurisdictional error in my case. There's just like major injustices in a case that it should have been thrown out for a long time ago.
I've just had a really funny email from the GMC, so I've been struck off 4 of the 5 counts for harassment of other doctors. And I sent a complaint in about a doctor who'd been harassing me online, exactly what I'd been found guilty of. They didn't want to investigate this guy. You can tell he's a senior Freemason or somewhere in the upper echelons of the elite. And they wrote back to me last Friday and said, Dr. Cartland, if you feel this doctor's harassing you, we're a medical regulator. We don't get involved in harassment cases.
Oh,
So could you please take this to civil proceedings or the police if you feel stressed? Meanwhile, the BBC headline reads, Dr. Carton struck off by the GMC for harassment. So mate, which one is it? Do you do harassment? Don't you do it? Or do you only do it for COVID dissenters and make examples of them? So this rot is deep into the profession, influenced by Big Pharma. I don't know. It's so corrupt. I don't think this is why I'm quite happy to be struck off now, because firstly, I wouldn't have gone back anyway into the profession. I couldn't sit there amongst people jabbing pregnant women and children with the vaccine, but with the bioweapon, call it what you wish. But it's done me a favour. It's released me from this kind of. I felt like a pill popper at the end. I don't know how you felt, but I always felt like every time I went back to conventional GP, I went back to my old ways, doling out drugs and pills and prescriptions rather than I do now, which is holistic. How I was trained as a GP, which was, focus on the biopsychosocial, focus on the patient's ideas and concerns and expectations, look at the whole patient and get to know their circumstances. And I can do that now through health coaching. So it's a blessing for me, but for the reputational damage. And I guess this is the thing, it's your reputation that gets dragged through the mud here. You've been suspended for what I'll confidently say is absolutely nothing. and the corruption in the abusive process in your case, I mean, I'm very rarely gobsmacked. But as you've been telling me the story, my heart's been beating, feeling physically sick on your behalf. And so credit to you for continuing your fight, and you're an absolute warrior. But yeah, where can we find you? You're on social media, are you? You're not
I'm
been
on.
ended off there yet.
Yes, no, not yet. So I'm on Facebook and on X.
So people can follow your story really, and that,
Yes,
we'll put the links to that in the Substack and on the
thank you,
YouTube
David.
channel. So,
Thank
Miley,
you.
final words over to you. I don't know. What would you say? Say if you've got, are you allowed to answer this question? I don't want you to jeopardise your case, but say you've got the person who's going to rule on, are you going to be continuing suspension or are you going to be let off and compensated and reprieved for this non-crime? What would you say to the judge in your sort of closing remarks?
Well, we should say that it doesn't take a genius to work out that I'm innocent. But the thing is that the case before the tribunal is not about getting compensation or anything. It's actually about whether or not they're going to cancel my license. Why would you cancel someone's license when you haven't actually heard the actual substantive matter of their case? How can you cancel someone's license when you actually don't know what it's about? And also, I don't want to start the whole thing. The most unjust thing about my case is that the complaint that is before the tribunal is not about the John Smith, or it's not about the patient whose life I saved, but it's about a complaint that came from the medical council members. Those people who suspended me were the one that made a complaint against me, and that complaint is the complaint that's before the tribunal. It's not the other two. So, and that was a secret complaint. And you know how I worked it out? I was the one that worked it out at the end after I sacked my lawyers.
Mm.
They couldn't work it out because it was embedded in the paperwork. So, I mean, if you have to, my question is that if you have to do all that in order to cancel my license, I must be innocent. Because you have to go extraordinary length to actually do that to me. You have to, because you can't have a judge who then, a judge of a case who became a complainant in the same matter. There's no justice in that. A judge cannot be they said that a judge cannot, well, you can't be a judge on your own matter. But in this case, it's a reverse. But it's the same. The same legal maxim applies, that you can't judge on a matter and then became a complainant in the same matter, and that is what I'm facing. My complaint is from the medical council, the members that suspended me, and they made a complaint against me, and I'm going to get I could potentially get my license cancelled as a result of that. So if that is the law, and this kind of thing can happen to anyone in Australia, I think the public should question what kind of what are the health regulators doing? What is their objective? What is their purpose? Because if you go to that extraordinary length to try to cancel me, that abuse of power, abuse of authority, a willingness to do something unlawful, why? Why? People should question that and think for themselves. Why would anyone go after a doctor who's done no wrong?
Well, the list's building up, isn't it? There's quite a lot of us around the world dotted there now, blacklisted from the profession. And I'm still confused why I'm struck off. You're confused why you're suspended. All of the other doctors who spoke out, well known around the world, are still confused as to why. I mean,
Well, I think we
in...
know, David, I think we all know why we've been struck off. But I think I want the public to question, why do they go such extraordinary length to attack us? Why?
And it's so blatant, isn't it? Like, say, abuse of process.
So because these people are not who they are. These health regulators are not health regulators. they're serving some other agendas and purposes. And it's not about public health. It's not about protecting the health of the public. It's not about keeping people safe, or it's not about us doing anything wrong. It's none of that. We know we've done the right thing, and many people, many members of the public know that we've done the right thing. But I want people to think about, that the roles of these health regulators. Are they really serving the public, or are they serving some other agendas? So
Well, again, often the regulators combine and say, we're here to, for patient safety, public safety, and to maintain the confidence in the profession. Meanwhile, doing everything they can to break the confidence, because one of the closing statements about me, they called me a reckless. They said, you're a danger to the profession, you brought the profession into disrepute, you've negatively affected public confidence in the profession. And I'm just holding a mirror up to them saying, like, look into it. That's what you guys have done with your corruption. You're allowing things into a tribunal that wouldn't normally be admitted into a court of law. For example, entrapment. As I wrote to the GMC, said entrapment can't be used in a court of law against somebody. Oh, well, we're the GMC and we can. It's like, well, this is a human rights breach here. I need to be able to use my witnesses as part of a fair trial. Doesn't matter, we're the GMC, we say your witnesses are not allowed. Even murderers are allowed their witnesses to speak, but not Dave Cartland. So many parallels, My Le, here, and I guess keep fighting is all I'll say. It can drive you to insanity. It nearly has done in my case, but just try and keep saying. And how are you feeling your days at the moment? Without giving too much.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm doing good. Keeping busy and trying to live a normal life at other times. Try not to think about my case too much.
Can you park it? You leave it on the shelf sometimes and get on with things.
I'm learning to. It's been 4 years, more than 4 years, 4 years and 4 months. So I'm getting stronger. I think last year I wasn't. I'm getting stronger and stronger. Yeah. So.
And anyone watching this, you're an absolute warrior. I think everyone would agree. And
you are.
I'm still confused as to why you've not been allowed to practice medicine for the last 4 years, but even after hearing the story. So, My Le, thank you ever so much for your time, and I'm sure people will support you in any way they can, and we'll keep an eye on the case, how it develops, and all the very best to you, really, in what is strange circumstances, for want of a better phrase. All right.
Thank you, David. Thank you. God bless. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you. Bye.